Joining me now, Sky News contributor Graham Richardson. Richo, we'll get to China shortly, but Anastasia Palaszczuk today has made a very big announcement. You'd be aware of it, and that is that Greater Sydney will be allowed back into Queensland, which allows you to obviously come up here and do your thing where you do it best on the Sunshine Coast and in Townsville. But also, too, it now looks inevitable that she'll open up Victoria. Let's have a listen to what she said earlier today.
We will always listen to the AHPPC advice and the advice of Dr. Young.
It absolutely depends, but you would have seen in South Australia how seriously they immediately took that outbreak and the restrictions they put in place. So there are so many variables here. Each particular case has got to be looked at on its merits and work out what the risk is to Queensland.
Richo, big boost for tourism, isn't it?
It is, and it's probably a bit overdue. Anastasia's a mate of mine, but I think this has been a little overplayed. But you can bet your life it's not won her any enemies in Queensland. Her actions have been extremely popular. As far as they're concerned in Queensland, she's been keeping those diseased southerners out of the way, and they all like that idea.
Well, they certainly do. There's no doubt it won under the election, Richo. Palaszczuk's pensioners, as they've been termed, you know, in places like Bribie Island and Caloundra and, of course, some of those places around Hervey Bay, they really embraced Anastasia because of that particular policy. So good news on that front. Let's talk about China. Let's talk a little bit about Scott Morrison's speech last night, which I thought was interesting. Let's have a little listen to what he had to say.
Our actions are wrongly seen and interpreted by some only through the lens of the strategic competition between China and the United States. It's as if Australia does not have its own unique interests or its own views as an independent sovereign state. Now, this is just false. And worse, it needlessly deteriorates relationships. If we are to avoid a new era of polarisation, then in the decades ahead, there must be more nuanced appreciation of individual states' interests in how they deal with the major powers. Stark choices are in no one's interests.
Richo, you've been around politics a lot longer than I have, but a decisive, strong Prime Minister, we saw it with Hawke, we saw it with John Howard. People love that, don't they?
I think what Scott Morrison said is exactly what I would say were I the Prime Minister. But that having been said, the reality is every day we choose China as a trade partner and we remain aligned defensively to the United States. And neither of those things can change. We will choose each one for each purpose, and we'll do that forever. As long as we can maintain it all. I mean, I think China sometimes gets a bit frustrated with us, as we're seeing at the moment. But Australia's got to stay true to itself, so it stays true to ANZUS, as it should. But when the crunch comes, where would we be without Chinese trade? You imagine how long it would take to replace the markets that we have there and how much damage that would do to our economy in the interim. The Chinese aren't stupid. They know they have us over a bit of a barrel and they play their cards pretty well. That's why they're one of the biggest powers in the world. They know exactly what they're doing. And a minnow like us, we can get squeezed in the middle of the power play. So we have to be very, very careful.
Richo, Paul Keating, there's been a lot of argy-bargy about whether the 12%, superannuation imposition should be introduced. It's currently 9.5%. Keating came out last night and said that the government was trying to kill superannuation, which I think is a little bit of an overreaction. I don't think they're trying to kill superannuation, but clearly they're thinking that the money is better off in people's pockets over the next few years than being put into super.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a bit of hyperbole in what Paul had to say, but obviously the government's under pressure from its employer base to take it no further. Employers are very keen to stop this, and you can understand why. You can also understand why workers don't mind it. It's just one of those difficulties. It's one of the last differences between the parties. I mean, these days you're looking at pretty similar policies on almost everything. So at least they show here that there's some sort of competition for ideas, and I think that's a good thing.
Richo, we've got this age-old problem right now with the Labor Party and, you know, the climate zealots. So you got Mark Butler and Plibersek on one hand saying one thing. Now, Murray Watt got up yesterday in Rockhampton and said that the Labor Party treasures every job within the coal industry, which he would say because he's up for re-election at the next election, and we've seen the impact that sort of abandoning coal miners had in some of those key Queensland seats at the last election. This is a real dilemma, isn't it, for Albanese right now, getting, you know, sort of treading the middle path properly?
Yeah, I think getting the balance right is something that Labor has failed to do for the last few elections. And I think Anthony Albanese got it right this week. I mean, we do have to acknowledge workers in the coal industry, and we do have to acknowledge, most of all, that we're going to be needing coal a long, long time into the future. The idea that in some way renewables are about to take over is rubbish, absolute rubbish. You know, you will be turning on the light and the heater and the air conditioner, and the power will be coming from coal for decades to come. And we should just get over all this nonsense we go on with and realise that. You know, you can't run around trying to lead the charge around the world about being anti-coal when the reality is here in Australia we'll continue to use it and will increase its use indeed in the coming decade. It's crazy to run around pretending anything else.
Well, Richo, it's interesting because 55,000 jobs directly related to coal just in Queensland, which is about the population of Hervey Bay, and something like 325,000 indirect jobs, which is the population of the Sunshine Coast. So it gives you an idea of what we're talking about here. Before we go, Richo, Trump, he hasn't conceded, but he's basically said in the last 12 hours in a tweet that he will allow the start of the transition process for Biden to become president. Finally, sanity starting to prevail.
Well, I think, you know, that's the first step in concession. But what he has proven really is, I think, what a lot of us suspected all along. The bloke's a big sook. He couldn't take it. You know, you have to be able to take defeat. One thing about politics is you don't always win. And when the day comes that you lose, you have to be able to stand up, take it on the chin and act responsibly. He just has not been able to do that. He's completely failed at it. And that's because this guy can't handle the thought even that he lost, let alone accept the reality.
Graham Richardson, always great to see you, mate. Take care.
Good on you, mate. Thank you.